I wish that that would go off, but it doesn't, 'cause my dorm room's annoying. Okie dokie, let's get started.
Next time they shine your light in the sky, don't go to it. The bat is dead. Bury it. Consider this mercy.
Tell me. Do you bleed? You will.
So, there's been a lot of talk about Batman vs. Superman, mostly negative, and while I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon of hating it, I didn't really like it. I wasn't disappointed, because I've gotten really good at managing my expectations and really going in with absolutely no expectations. But coming out of this movie, I definitely was not very pleased with how it turned out. It's a fairly decent Superman movie and a very bad Batman movie. But one thing it is not is a Batman versus Superman movie. If you're going in this with a hope of seeing these ideologies and these two philosophies coming at each other, and you're going to get some cool intellectual debate through action, that's not what you're going to get. And if you just care about seeing this as two really cool people who have the potential to do some cool action coming and fighting, well, there's about 7 minutes of that in this movie. The whole premise of Batman vs. Superman is not delivered in this movie. There is a fight, a single fight, and these people don't like each other. But I don't really understand why. The motivations of these characters, of Batman, Superman, and Lex Luthor, are not explored. And that's fine with some people. You can get away with that with Wonder Woman, since she's not in this movie very much. You can get away with that with Perry White, or with the Senator who's going after Superman. But if this is a Batman vs. Superman movie, and your main villain is Lex Luthor, you need to explain the motivations of these characters. It's almost like we're going into this movie knowing that Batman vs. Superman don't like each other, but that's not a precedent. You need to explain this. You need to give us a good introduction to why these characters don't think that the other character should be operating the way that they do. But let's just back up a bit and get to Batman himself. Batman is my favorite superhero, and I'm fine with there being changes to the character, and I'm fine with them altering things. That's cool. That's what the Nolan movies did, that's what every movie back into Adam West did, and I like a lot of those different versions. But you have to keep the essence of the character, and I don't feel like this movie does it. The aesthetics of Batman are cool. The Batmobile, Alfred, the Batcave, but none of this stuff really matters. It's just like you have this cake that tastes horrible, but the icing on the cake looks really nice. There's been a lot of talk about how Batman kills people in this, but he does kill people in Nolan and Burton movies. So what's the big problem? Well, in Burton movies it just is a problem, right? When he straps a bomb onto someone and then smiles and kicks them away and they blow up, that's just weird and kind of unnerving to see, and I don't like it. In the Nolan movies, it's portrayed more as casualties and not directly his fault. In this movie, though, he's just straight killing someone. And it's like that Burton, where it's unnerving. But where in Burton, it's just part of the style and the world, and I don't like it, but I can come to accept it. In this, it builds upon this idea that I have, that Batman is a psychopath and completely insane. Batman killing people isn't the only reason. There are these sequences in the movies, these dream sequences, that also make me feel he's insane. And then just the way that he interacts with other characters makes him kinda come off as unstable. And this is the perfect example as to why Batman shouldn't kill people. Because when he does, he is no better than them. He says this in this movie that he's a criminal, but you can play with that idea, where he's a criminal, but he's a criminal who's fighting for good. In this, he's just a criminal. Yeah, maybe some of the stuff he's doing will end in good, but for the most part, he just comes off as a psychopathic killer who just likes hurting people. And if they did stuff with that, that would be interesting. But they don't, because they don't dive into the psychology or the philosophy of this character. Which, some people might say, okay, it's not a Batman movie. But it is. It's a Batman versus Superman movie. And if Superman is coming after this guy, I need to understand this guy he's coming after. And if Batman's coming after Superman, I need to understand this character. The two sides of this conflict, I just don't feel like I can sympathize with because I don't understand them. I understand Superman a little bit better because of Man of Steel, and so I have that character coming from here. But overall, there isn't a lot of development. That's why I say it's a decent Superman movie. Because if I take what I know from Man of Steel and put it into this movie, I can get stuff out. And there's interesting stuff with the politics of Superman. Should he be allowed to do this? Is he doing good? All this stuff with the Senator, though I feel like that overcrowds this movie, is what I find interesting. I also like the world surrounding Superman. Anything that's carried over from Man of Steel, I really like in this. I love the stuff with the Daily Planet. I'm pretty sure that Lawrence Fishburne is my favorite Perry White of all time. And I really like the stuff that involves some of the Kryptonian technology. I won't get too much into spoilers, but it's really interesting. And for the most part, I like Lex Luthor. He's extremely over the top and they should have toned him down, especially in the sense of the soundtrack that they use for him. His theme is very kind of quirky, disconcerting, and over the top, and it doesn't help the character in the first half. But when you get to the second half, I really enjoy it. And overall, his plan is pretty smart. But it's when these things come together that I feel like this movie falls apart. When you have the weak Batman side mixing with the good Superman side, but not fantastic movie, it's just okay. It starts to drag it down. Not to mention that this is a very crowded movie with a lot of stuff going on, and none of the stuff is ever developed. It's like I'm watching highlights from a season of TV. Like, this dinner party is its episode. Let's cut out the majority of it and just show the stuff that you need to know. Instead of showing us the stuff that you need to know to develop this plot and these characters. Not to mention that the way it's put together is a huge jumbled mess in the first half. It's just kind of like they threw all the scenes into a hat and just put them there. They are chronological, but it doesn't matter because these things are just happening and they don't seem to matter. The second half is more focused because all these things come together, but it's on such a weak foundation that it seems to not matter. The action in this movie is definitely a step up from Man of Steel, but that's because I really didn't like the action in Man of Steel. It still has a problem of being over the top, it's kind of hard to tell what's going on, and there's just an immense amount of destruction. And I understand with the finale, you have to have a amount of destruction, especially because you're building from Man of Steel, but over-destruction doesn't equal good action. This destruction has to feel justified, and I have to understand and care about this destruction, and I really don't. But there are some things I like about this movie. I like the performances for the most part, especially Holly Hunter. She's just awesome, and she's great in this too. And Henry Cavill is a pretty good Superman, even though he's given a kind of weak script to work with. None of the problems with Batman come from Ben Affleck, and I really like Jeremy Irons and Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White, like I already mentioned. I like a lot of the world building in this. There are some really good name drops and stuff, which are really hard to do in superhero movies and make them seem natural. But when they name drop Stryker's Island, or when you see the Aquaman logo, it's pretty cool. They go over the top in some of those scenes, but I think that for the most part they keep it subtle. Wonder Woman's awesome. I don't really care about seeing another cinematic portrayal of Batman and Superman because I've seen so many. But I've never seen a cinematic Wonder Woman before. And Gal Gadot is really good in this. She is a good actress and she has some really fun scenes. When she's interacting with Batman, when she's fighting, when she's just standing around. She's a lot of fun to be around and she seems really cool. And I can't wait to see more of her. I have to turn my phone on silent because people keep texting me. And it's these world-building elements that still have me on board for the rest of the DC Cinematic Universe. I was kind of mixed on Man of Steel, and I didn't like this movie, but I like what I saw of Flash and Cyborg and especially Wonder Woman. Overall, this movie isn't great. One of the sides of this conflict is a psychopathic killer, the other is pretty good, but nothing special, and overall the conflict just doesn't seem to matter at the end of this movie. The villain is good for half of the movie, and I like the small world building elements, but overall I feel like the structure really makes this movie fall apart. I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10, but I do recommend seeing it, especially if you're a DC fan. Why I think this was an awful portrayal of Batman, one of the friends I went with said that this is extremely comic accurate, so it really just comes down to your personal interpretation. I'm still on board for Suicide Squad and Wonder Woman and Justice League, so it didn't do a lot of damage, and it's definitely not one of the worst movies ever made like some people are toting out to be. It's not even worse than a lot of the Batman movies we've gotten. To be fair, we've gotten some really bad Batman movies, but still. So tell me what you think about it down in the comments below. If you like the video, like the video. If you like me, subscribe, and as always, rock on.